I could hardly imagine a more damning case, I remarked. If ever circumstantial evidence pointed to a criminal, it does so here. Circumstantial evidence is a very tricky thing, answered Holmes thoughtfully. It may seem to point very straight to one thing, but if you shift your own point of view a little, you may find it pointing in an equally uncompromising manner to something entirely different. It must be confessed, however, that the case looks exceedingly grave against the young man, and it is very possible that he is indeed the culprit. There are several people in the neighborhood, however, and among them Miss Turner, the daughter of the neighboring landowner, who believe in his innocence, and who have retained Lestrade, whom you may recollect in connection with A Study in Scarlet, to work out the case in his interest. Lestrade, being rather puzzled, has referred the case to me, and hence it is that two middle-aged gentlemen are flying westward at 50 miles an hour instead of quietly digesting their breakfast at home. That, my friends, is from the Boscombe Valley Mystery, your Sherlock Saturday for today, your week late Sherlock Saturday for today. Sorry about that, guys. But it is indeed the Boscombe Valley Mystery, the fourth of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the series of stories that were published in the book The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the first Sherlock Holmes collection of short stories. It was first published in the Strand magazine in 1891. This is a pretty good story. A lot better than the last story, in my opinion, The Case of Identity. Sherlock Holmes has a lot more to do in this. First of all, he's already left the house. He's already left Baker Street to go check on this mystery. Because it happens out in the country, out there in the country by a lake. A man who had just been arguing with his son is murdered. Very little is known about what happened. The son, who of course protests his innocence, has been arrested because all the circumstantial evidence points in his direction. But of course, since he's the obvious one, it can't be him. So Lestrade, who can't figure out anything, has called on Sherlock Holmes as usual. So Sherlock Holmes is rushing to the Boscombe Valley to figure out what happened. So Sherlock Holmes is on his way there because Lestrade called him. Now Lestrade, it's still very early in the Sherlock Holmes mysteries. So Lestrade has only showed up in the Study in the Scarlet. And he's calling on Sherlock because even at this early point in their relationship, he knows that Sherlock is a great detective and that he's probably a lot better than he is. Later on, Lestrade's character develops. He's actually one of my favorite characters from this series, Lestrade. And he gains a significant amount of respect for Sherlock Holmes as the stories go on. But for right now, this guy who's accused of murdering his father is in a lot of trouble. Now, there's a lot behind this mystery. Sherlock Holmes shows up, examines the area where the murder happened, and right away comes to the conclusion that it was somebody else. There's another man there who is the real murderer. He could figure it out just from the marks left behind. He figures out a lot about this fella who committed this crime, but not enough to identify him. But don't worry, this is Sherlock Holmes, so he's going to identify him pretty quick, because this is a short story. Can't drag it out. Now, of course, he figures out pretty quick who it is that actually committed this crime. It will, of course, remain a mystery. I don't want to spoil the story for you because I want you to read this story. And there's a pretty big backstory to this mystery involving romance and blackmail. Blackmail rears its ugly head quite often in the Victorian age in the Sherlock Holmes stories. So Sherlock Holmes finds the murderer and confronts the murderer, along with Watson, of course. And this is one of those interesting times where Sherlock Holmes decides to take the law once again in his own hands. I'm not going to say why, but he does. He figures that the son will be set free eventually, because of all the information that Sherlock Holmes has figured out that it couldn't be the son. So he thinks the son's going to get off. If not, he's going to have to turn this guy in. But he leaves it up to his own discretion at this point. And he decides to let the culprit go. I'm not going to say why. I'm not going to say who the culprit is or what's going on. There's a big story behind it. But that's interesting. Sherlock Holmes is already proving to be a very, very interesting character this early on in his career. He's a take-charge guy, and if he decides that he thinks the law is going to treat somebody unfairly or cruelly, if he thinks that, well, maybe that murdered guy had it coming, if he thinks something like that, he's going to make his own judgment. And if he has to let a murderer go free once in a while, because it seems to him to be the more moral thing to do, then, you know, he's going to do it. And Sherlock Holmes, as you will see throughout the stories, is not averse to breaking a few laws himself. So it's interesting. Sherlock Holmes, even this early, is showing himself to be a very fascinating character. It's no mystery why he caught on and became so enormously popular. And he became really popular with this series of stories. And this story, the Boscombe Valley Mystery, is a really, really good one. And I have to think that this is one of those stories that propelled his fame to such great heights so early. So I highly recommend it. That was your Sherlock Saturday for today. And I hope I can catch you tomorrow, because tomorrow is Sunday. We gotta do the Sunday Penguin every Sunday. So I will catch you tomorrow. What is the Sunday Penguin for tomorrow? It's a mystery. I'll catch you then here at Stately Vaughan Manor. Thanks, guys.